What's going on, everyone? So, in the upcoming Scream 7, we are going to get Sidney Prescott and her daughter, Tatum Evans, right? And no, I'm really excited and curious to see kind of their dynamic. How are they as mother daughter? How is Sydney as a mother, right? How is Sydney as a wife, right? Like, does she have her guards up? Is she just kind of, happy go lucky? Is she like a helicopter parent? Is she like paranoid? Right? Like there's so many possibilities for how they're going to approach Sydney and her character in this upcoming Scream movie, and then obviously her family and whatnot, which is again unprecedented. Right? This is the first time we're going to actually get a kind of a bird's eye view into that world, and I hope that they do. I hope that they do a good job of like allowing us to kind of digest and see a little bit. I'm not saying you have to spend the whole movie kind of going over Sydney the mother and Sydney the wife and stuff, but it'd be nice to kind of get a scene or two where you kind of get a quick feel, right? Like, okay, cool. So Sydney, this is how Sydney is. This is how Mark is. This is how her daughter is, right? Is the daughter a little rebellious, right? Like all those things I think are very important and big factors. But another thing that I've talked about, right, you know, is it possible that Sidney Prescott is maybe going by a different name? I mean, it would make sense that she'd be going by bare minimum Sidney Evans, right? So it's a good chance that she's not Sidney Prescott in this film. But even if she is, right? Like, is it also possible that she's like a Sarah Evans or like a Grace Evans or something like that, to where she's not Sydney, and like the people in the town or village or whatever she lives in, just they don't know, they don't even realize that that's Sidney Prescott, the harbinger of death, the angel of death, right? And even more than that, like even if the town does know, like does her daughter know? Right? Is her daughter familiar with Sidney Prescott and no? Or does she, like, there's multiple ways even that can go though, right? It could be like, does she know to the extent of what Sydney is, or does she kind of like look at it as like, oh, okay, so I'm sorry that your boyfriend tried to kill you type thing. Mine wouldn't do that type thing, right? Or because that could explain a lot too, right? Like if her daughter doesn't know all the details, well then anything that Sydney does, her daughter's going to try to probably push back and be like, oh, come on, you're over dramatizing it, or you're doing whatever, right? Or like I said, if she has a boyfriend, it's like, oh, just because your boyfriend tried to kill you doesn't mean that mine will, type thing. And Sydney's just overprotective and overbearing because it's her daughter, right? Like there's that approach, and then there's also the approach that like she doesn't know that she's Sidney Prescott, right? Maybe because she was Sidney Evans before, she just never put two and two together, or maybe, like I said, Sydney changed her name when she got pregnant, had a kid to try to keep her kid safe, right? That could be a real thing where, she was just like, because like you look at Scream 3, I don't think she'd go back to being a recluse. I don't think she'd go back to, hiding out, kind of hide in plain sight type thing. But it would make sense that she would do something like that because she had a kid and she wants to protect her kid and she doesn't want Ghostface coming after her, you know, and using her kid. So let me change my name, have the kid. The kid has a completely different name. I'm married. She's Tatum Evans. Like they're never gonna connect it, right? As far as my daughter goes. So my daughter's safe. So even if somebody recognizes me and stumbles across me and Ghostface comes after me, hopefully my daughter and everyone is safe, right? Like that could be that approach, and that could be something that could be a cool, interesting kind of position because Ghostface is going around taking people out, targeting Tatum, and to to have like a scene or dialogue where it's like you have no idea who your mother really is, right? You just see your mother as the local bar owner, and an overprotective, overbearing mother, but in reality she's a killer, and she's this and she's that and blah blah blah, and she has more blood on her hands than any ghost face that's ever targeted her, and just kind of go down the story of Sidney Prescott or whatever, and you know kind of open her eyes to where like, wow, like I didn't know this about my mother. And, now they're in the thick of it and in the mix of like everything that's going on. Right. I think that there's an interesting approach and opportunity there for that. Right. And again, I kind of like that idea. Kind of like the idea of having Sydney's daughter completely oblivious, and then now she has the information and she's got to kind of go over that and process that. How does she take it? Does she blame her mother? Right? Like, all of this is because of you, right? All of this is because you're, like, because you got to keep in mind, last time she was like in a town and whatnot, like everyone called her the angel of death and stuff, right? Like, don't you think it's very possible that people would be bullying Tatum, or, oh, your mother's, everyone that's around your mother dies type thing? Like, did she have to grow up with that? Did she have to grow up with that bullying? Did she have to grow up with, kids and how mean that they can be, and talking about like a mother and grandmother and everything like that? Or is it something where, you know, no, like everyone's oblivious to it, Tatum's oblivious to it, and it's just like, surprise, you know, that's your mother, right? The Sidney Prescott. I think that that could be a very interesting approach, and kind of give a new creative insight to the upcoming Scream 7. Obviously, it boils down to the execution and story in that regard too, right? It's gotta make sense. It's gotta be a reason, and you also got to keep in mind that, like, Sydney went from, again, being a recluse. She was hiding away, trying to the killers can't find what, or can't kill what they can't find, type thing, right? And then she realized like that didn't work. Ghostface is just gonna find her anywhere, right? And then she has the coming out of darkness. She goes on the book tour. She's stepping and reclaiming her name, right? And then how do you go from that to nothing, right? Like, again, it would make sense that the story, I think, would be easy, because it's like she got married and had a kid, right? Or had kids, right? Like, so when she got pregnant, she just realized like, I don't want my children in jeopardy, right? Like, I don't want to run the risk of my child being a target, right? Because I'm Sidney Prescott and Ghostface is just always going to come around. And you also got to keep in mind, like, she hasn't really been the target, like the main target, since Roman, right? Scream 4, yes, she became a target. She became one of the targets, but a lot of it was because she just was there. She showed up, right? And then Scream 5, she purposely injected herself because Dewey. So it's just things like that, like, how does this kind of take shape? We'll see. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? If it, what are your thoughts? Do you love the idea? Hate the idea? Kind of mixed in the middle? Do you think that, like, yes, Sidney Prescott, she should kind of, be her own thing? No one knows that it's Sidney. Her daughter doesn't know that it's Sidney. Or do you think, like, no, everyone should know, her daughter should know, and they're all just kind of like living their lives? How do you feel? Either way, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. We enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.